Hi, and welcome to Rethink Dialog. In today's episode, we're going to talk to Jon Lombardo, who is the leader of Social Media Center of Excellence at General Electric. Let's go and say hi. So, hi, Jon. Welcome to Norway. Really pleasure to have you here.
I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah. So this is Rethink Dialog, a video podcast or video series about social business marketing and how corporations use social business marketing. You work for a huge brand. I mean, when you told me at the dinner we had in New York half a year ago, you said that GE was actually one of the oldest innovation companies in the world.
Yep, that's
Tell
right.
me a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, we invented the first R&D laboratory for all intents and purposes in the United States. I think it was 1902, 1903. But it was essentially, Thomas Edison put together a bunch of really talented and brilliant inventors, and they were in what almost looks like a farmhouse now, just outside of New York City. Okay. And they would bang heads and come up with new ideas and try to invent the things that they thought the world needed. And so in many ways, innovation has always been at the core of who we are as a company. I mean, it starts with Edison and sort of his band of merry inventors, but it's always been who we are, and it continues to be who we are today.
Cool. And your job at GE, what's that?
I am the leader of the Social Media Center of Excellence, but I think in more common terms, you would just say that I lead social media for us. And that really involves not so much me doing everything, but me organizing folks all around the world to make sure that we have a coherent, brand strategy for social. And we're in, 120 different countries selling products and services, and
wow.
That doesn't mean that we have social lit up in all of those countries, but there's no question that we will at some point. And so we're in the process of moving from being, a sort of more US-centric company with respect to social to being a more global company.
Okay. And I guess, so like you say, you're a social business. How social are you? And in terms of, like you say, you have 120 countries you're present in.
Yep.
How do you use social media to interact and to actually connect with everyone that is working with the company?
Yeah, it's a great question. We are in the process of figuring that out. I think like a lot of people, we haven't totally nailed it, but we've made a lot of progress and we've learned a lot in the process. But I mean, I think if you think about business in general, it's very social, right? I mean, if you go to a meeting, it's two people sitting on sides of the table talking about what they're trying to do together, and then it's, people ultimately, based on that conversation, making decisions, right? So business is inherently social. We're now just finding tools and technologies that allow us to, I guess, codify that in a bit of a different way. So we are trying to bring social into, I think it starts typically in marketing and comms for obvious reasons because people are trying to get the message out. Yeah. But increasingly we're finding it, it's getting into engineering, it's getting into sales. And those are spaces where, if you think about it in the past, those are people who would be considered to be a bit more antisocial, but actually have a lot of the insights and sort of the expertise that is going to drive business forward. So they may not necessarily be on Twitter, but a lot of times they may be in a customer community where they're connecting with clients and they're saying, you're having this problem with a jet engine, well, here's how we'd like you to go about fixing it, or give me a call and we can take care of it. So we're introducing opportunities to connect all parts of our business with our customers, which allows us to get closer to our customers, to understand what they need, and then to produce the products and services that will make GE and our partners successful. So it's, again, it's a process, but we're finding ways to connect people.
Yeah, cool. So which kind of platforms, networks are you present? Like you said now, communities is important, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
Which other platforms do you use actively?
So I think one of the interesting trends I can talk about what I use personally, but I'll talk about the business to start. I think one of the interesting trends we are seeing is that a lot of the tools and technologies they start out in the consumer space, so it's brands, they get on Facebook as a way to tell their brand story, or they're on Twitter doing customer service. And now you have platforms that are a bit less consumer facing and a bit more B2B, and that's actually an exciting trend for GE because we are fundamentally a B2B business outside of a couple of businesses. And so in that space, we see LinkedIn as an emerging powerhouse like a lot of people. I mean, they've got fantastic content now built around thought leaders. They've got groups, which are, for all intents and purposes, communities. We also do a lot with white label customer communities. So you have platforms out there like Jive and Lithium, and Salesforce has their communities product now. And those are in many ways, it takes all of the things that work really well on a Facebook or on a LinkedIn. It's just that you have it in a private setting where the conversation is a bit more focused and we and our customers control the data a little bit more than the platforms do. So you're seeing a move from, I guess, consumer to or sort of B2C to B2B. And and we'll see more technologies. I mean, you have the Yammers out there, you have Chatter. I mean, all these technologies that are in many ways aping what we're seeing again in the consumer space, but bringing that same value and that same conversation and connection to the business space.
And when you're saying B2B, GE is a business-to-business company. For business-to-consumer companies, the brands, it's a lot of like fluffiness when it comes to the use of social media. It's building a brand or engaging with the clients, but they don't really see that it pays off or the ROI is difficult to calculate. How is it for B2B, for you guys?
B2B, fortunately, is actually a little bit easier.
Yeah?
Because if you think about particularly in our case, some of the products and services we sell, we may sell a $30 million or $100 million wind or gas turbine. So if we can actually foster the right connection through, let's say we write a blog article about sort of next generation wind turbine technology, and somebody reads it and says, wow, B2B really, GE really has expertise in that space. I'm going to give them a call. I'm going to try to learn more about, number one, what they're talking about in this article, then see who else they have on their team, maybe in the engineering or sales space, just to get more information here. And then if that blog post then creates a relationship, and then we sort of get that in our CRM, and then ultimately through a number of meetings and relationships building, we would then make a sale. You can see how social actually pays off.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of attribution that has to happen in that process, but it's a little bit clearer for us because we only, in many cases, need one connection through social to actually see a result.
Yeah.
So, but if you're at a B2C brand, it is difficult, I think, to a lot of times attribute sales to what you're doing in social. So a lot of times, the easier way to think about it is it's creating efficiencies across your business it's saving money versus making money.
Yeah.
But I think everybody's trying to figure out how does social translate into revenue. You've got a lot of really smart people in this space, so it'll happen. It's just not fully baked yet.
Exactly. So your team, how big is your team? You said Center of Excellence. We've seen some Center of Excellence teams that have done amazing things. Oreo during Super Bowl.
Yep.
How is your team scoped?
So we have, the Center of Excellence pulls together people from a global purview. Because we've got to find a way to connect and share insights, because things that work in the US may work well abroad, or things that are working well abroad may work well in the US. It's just, that's how we are really, I guess, making sure that people are sharing what's working. So that's really the way that the Center of Excellence is structured. It's got probably 20 key members, and then those 20 members, actually, they control typically digital or social within their region. So it's really set up on a regional basis. So it's quite big, and we find that it will get bigger and bigger, because in addition to having, that's sort of the core team that's responsible for having conversation and sharing insights. But if you actually think about the teams underneath those people, the company or the scope of the COE gets to be quite big. And we have COEs for a lot of different things. We have them for digital, we have them for mobile, we have them for communications. I mean, it's a pretty common way of trying to connect people on a global basis.
But I also saw that you have like YouTube videos with flybys of the factory that produces jet turbines and everything.
Yep.
So you're also like exposing a lot of what you do. Is that like so social is implemented in everything that GE is about? So even from management level, everyone is like on board?
Yeah, certainly if you went to, let's put it this way, it has gotten there very quickly. Because I think people recognize the benefits potentially to social, and they recognize that we have to get started early and experiment to figure out how this is going to play out and how we can win using social. But if you were at the Salesforce event, Dreamforce, the keynote was a conversation between Mark Benioff and Jeff Immelt and Colin Powell. So our CEO, one of the 10 biggest companies in the world, he's on stage at Dreamforce. And Dreamforce at this point, it's not so much about just straight up CRM, it's more about sort of social business and the future of social business. So there's no question that we have seen support from the top down. You have Jeff Immelt, who's the CEO, again, on stage at Dreamforce. You have Beth Comstock, who's our CMO, and Beth was rated the #1 social CMO by Forbes. She's very active and very forward-thinking in this space. Has written a lot of great stuff recently on LinkedIn around thought leadership. Encourage anybody to read that. So we get the support from the top up. And then, of course, on the day-to-day, you have to find people in the organization who are really excited about social and who want to partner with different people in the COE or at corporate to roll out new programs. We've got a lot of really talented people who are trying to figure out how they can do business better, and increasingly it's social that actually paves the way for them.
Cool. And what's your background? So where do you come from before you ended up in GE?
Yep. It's always an interesting story or conversation to have.
Yeah.
My original background is after I graduated from college, I lived in China for 5 years.
Really?
I studied Chinese in school, yeah. And
wow.
So when I was in China, I started a credit card startup that was backed by a lot of venture capital money. At the time, China didn't have credit cards. They were very new to the market. This is around 2000, probably 5. And so that was my first experience. It was in a small company that started out with 30 people, grew to 3,000 people. I was living in Shanghai.
Wow.
And then I also was involved in another startup, which was a creative agency, which still does a lot of really great work in China, named NeoCha. And that was, again, one of the first examples of, you have a lot of the big sort of holding companies there, but you don't have many small creative agencies. So this was one of the first creative agencies. So really my background is 5 or 6 years in China at 2 different startups, one that got to be very big and one that's still quite small, nimble, and smart.
Yeah.
Then after that, I was on a political campaign. And after the political campaign, I ended up at GE. So most of my background is in small enterprise and startups, but recently I have joined one of the biggest companies in the world.
The major league.
yeah, it's very different.
So are there any principles based on your work that you're doing now at GE that you could give as an advice to a small business company or an entrepreneur? So key learnings, something.
Sure. I think the one big thing, if I could sort of pull it into just one sentence, I would encourage everybody to rethink their business around people and not technology. I think the one trend I see at GE and outside GE is people tend to believe that technology will solve all of their problems. So they want to figure out what the new platform they should be on is, or what CRM they need to use, or do I use Sprinkler or do I use Spreadfast? And the reality is that those tools are only as good as the processes behind them, and the processes behind them are sort of reimagining your brand around all of your human touch points. So if it's customer service, where are all the places somebody might come and try to sort of find you for customer service? I mean, a lot of people don't put any phone number or any contact information on a website. I mean, that's not really, you got to socialize your website in that way, right? It's a really simple thing, but everyone forgets that. You go and it says info@xyzcompany.com. I mean, it's really outdated and ridiculous. I mean, you really got to take people and put them front and center.
Yeah.
And that's true of things like your websites, that's true of things like blogs, that's true of all of your social media. I mean, you've got to be available to people and engaging with people. And it sounds really straightforward, but it's amazing how much people forget it. Just to sort of, I mean, that's what social is really doing, is it's rebuilding the web around people, not around content. So you're finding information through people versus the way you used to go to Google and you would search. Or Yahoo would literally have a team of editors that would show you content. And now you're finding it through your friends or through thought leaders. And so that's the world that we live in. And that's, I think, the paradigm shift, is it's away from content, it's more towards people and communication. And so if you rethink your business around what are your assets? Your assets are always your people.
Yeah.
So it's, have them write the blog, have them go to events, do the things, I guess, in the offline world that have always worked, find ways to do those online. Because really a lot of the things we're seeing right now, that's just the same things that have always worked in business. It's sort of the personal to personal connection.
Yeah.
And now we're finding ways to do it online through LinkedIn, where you have a meeting and then you connect with those people online, right? That actually happened in the offline world, right?
That's what you did.
And so exactly. So I think it's actually getting back to the basics versus doing something new.
Yeah. Good. I like that. Do you use, so a lot of, like for example, Starbucks are using the community to come up with ideas on new product development.
Yep.
Do you guys do that?
We do. I mean, some of the stuff that we build, jet engines, we can't necessarily work with the broader community, but that said, we are finding ways to get, we may have 100 customers for certain businesses. We're finding ways to get the right 100 people or 200 people into a community, and then we're having a very high caliber conversation that helps us to rethink our products and services. So we're doing it just, I would argue, at a different scale and a different expertise. But in the social space, so that's more on the commercial side. So the commercial side, again, it's going to be a lot smaller and a lot more focused, which is great. I mean, you should scale the opportunity, to the size that makes sense. And But on the brand side, where we're trying to tell our story, GE is one of the most widely held retail stocks in America. So we have a lot invested in trying to show people that we are an innovative company at our core, as a way, to get people to want to work for us, to want to buy our stock, and in general to sort of just, want to be involved with our brand. And one of the ways that we do that is, of course, through conversations on social. So one thing we did, which was quite fun, was for Inventors Day, which again is all about sort of science, technology, innovation, things that we care about. That's February 11th in the United States. It's also Edison's birthday, so It has a personal connection to GE. We asked people what they would like to see invented as part of the future, just as a way to sort of connect with people around shared interest and to tell the story of innovation. And so people would share over Twitter what they wanted us to create, and then we actually worked with a design studio who put together, within about 30 minutes, these very cool mock-ups of the things people wanted invented, and then we would share those back with our community. So we actually ended up crowdsourcing 80 inventive ideas, and at the end we had a gallery of these beautiful images that were crowdsourced. And it was a way to co-create a conversation around science, technology, innovation with people who care about the same things that GE cares about. So we do a lot, in that way, both on the commercial side and on the brand side.
Amazing, cool. Last question. So, what inspires you? Where do you find that little thing that gives you the spark to do something?
That's a really good question. I think I have to eat my own cooking on this one. I find certain people who I find to be very intelligent and very, very, very sort of, I guess, sharp around where I think media is going, and I tend to sort of read a lot of the things that they read, or they would recommend that I read or that they write. So some people that have influenced me, I've been really enjoying a lot of stuff that Reid Hoffman has been writing on LinkedIn. He talks really about understanding networks, your personal social network, as the way to have a better, better and more fulfilling career. I think his stuff's really interesting because, again, it's the online. LinkedIn is the online representation of your offline social network, right? So I think that's very smart. And there's another person who's a thinker in that way, is Paul Adams from Facebook. Yeah. And he's the same idea. I mean, he's the first one who sort of, highlighted for me the fact that, the things that are social have been social for 70,000 years among people. Just because technology has really sort of skyrocketed in the last 100 years doesn't mean that people have fundamentally changed. And so you've got to understand people and then build experiences or solutions around what human needs are. I think this is where people mistake. People will build a technology a lot of times, but it actually doesn't solve the human need, and as a result, it doesn't work, right? Exactly. So starting from the insight and then building experiences and solutions around that. So I think those are two guys who are quite smart, and I take a lot of inspiration in the things that they say and they do. There's a guy named Robin Sloan, who's a media theorist who used to work at Twitter and now works on his own, but he has done he's got a fantastic blog, which talks a lot about visual storytelling. He's got some good stuff on that. He did a fantastic app it was called Fish, a tap essay, and it's a new way of storytelling where literally you just tap to go to the next slide, so you tap next slide. It's just a really interesting way of rethinking storytelling in an app environment. So, I try to find experiences like that. And then, of course, there's a bunch of really smart people that I have known and grown up with, and both sort of personally and professionally, and those are the people that every day on Twitter or on Facebook or on LinkedIn, they share articles and ideas, and I take a lot of inspiration from them. So it's a combination, I suppose, of top down and maybe as much as anything bottom up, just among peers who I've connected with, because we all care about, I think, the future of media. I mean, this is sort of how we met each other, right?
Exactly, yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for being a part of Rethink Dialog.
Yeah, thank you for having me.